I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. This is a little bit out of our wheelhouse because it's about the environment, it's about the planet. But without the environment and the planet, you don't have, a financial system, you don't have a political system. You really have just a big ball of fire, a big ball of nothing on planet Earth. The person I am going to bring on, I've had on a couple of times. We've been following this story. He's been following this story with his own money and fighting the good fight and out there warning people about the severe problems with what many of you know as chemtrails. And I want to start this off with the interview. They're not chemtrails. That's not a scientific term. That's a slang. And if you look up chemtrails on the internet, you won't see, you'll see a bunch of goofy stuff on there. We're talking about geoengineering and things like solar radiation management. And to talk about this phenomenon going on, it's been going on for decades, Dane Wigington from Geoengineeringwatch.org. Dane, thank you for coming to us from California.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for your voice in this battle. It's very, very important that people hear from those with credibility as you have.
Well, thank you very much, but you have a lot of credibility too. I know you don't take donations. You don't. Well, you do take donations, but you don't have any real corporate sponsors or anybody like that. You've been fighting this fight with the Geoengineeringwatch.org, which is a big site. You get a lot of traffic to it every month. And I got that right about it's not chemtrails. That people know it as chemtrails. But it's not chemtrails. It is geoengineering. It is solar radiation management. These are sciences. These are planetary science disciplines. Correct?
You're absolutely correct. Stratospheric aerosol injection. There's a number of science terms, but climate engineering, solar radiation management, two great terms, leads to hard science. Chemtrails is the buzzword that all the political system, all the agencies are trained to shut down and deny any sort of inquiry, and so we want to avoid that sort of track.
Okay, and to start off, too, this is one of the pictures you sent me, and I've had other people, oddly enough, around the globe, somebody from Switzerland, somebody from just last week from Illinois, send me a picture that looks something like this, and what I'm holding up is the sky cross-hatched, with a pattern that pilots, trolls, pilots, whatever, they'll get on and say, oh no, this is just contrails. This isn't really aerosol spraying or geoengineering or solar radiation management. I'm showing up a picture with this crosshatch over the sky. You sent me. This is one of the many pictures and videos and things on your site. This is what we're talking about. Just to start off, this kind of spray pattern, which they're trying to basically cool the planet. But you're saying that what they're doing is wrecking the planet, and you have hard proof in the form of a new document that you have released last week, that you uncovered, a Senate document, a 750-page Senate document that lays out the geoengineering plan and on all that. Tell us about the document you posted on your site last week.
Well, you're correct. In the picture you're holding up, again, this is the express goal of, quote, solar radiation management, to put light scattering particles into the atmosphere to try to deflect some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation. Of course, that traps thermal radiation, disrupts the hydrological cycle, weather patterns around the globe, but that is the express goal, and that's what got me into this fight, Greg, was my background in solar with Bechtel Power. My home's off-grid, was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. When I began to lose 60-70% of my solar uptake from that kind of grid pattern that you're showing, that's a massive amount of sun blockage, and that's the goal of these programs. So in regard to the, quote, condensation trail lie, on our website we have tutorials on the high bypass turbofan jet engine, which is all commercial aircraft, all military tankers. People need to examine the data on the site so they can see that the design of this engine is not conducive to making any condensation trail except under the most extreme circumstances. So when we have documents like this 1978 document, and that's not the only one we have, by the way. We have another one, presidential document from 66, another one we're going to be posting from 65. But this 750-page document, how much proof do people need? In this document is described the need for global cooperation between nations. There was some 50 or 60 named in the document involved with the programs as well. Even between nations that would otherwise have hostilities between them, those hostilities are to be put aside for the cooperation with these programs. The document also names about 10 federal agencies, about 12 major universities, describes the need for complete immunity from liabilities created for all those involved in these programs, to have complete immunity for the damage they've done, basically. It's an extremely damning document, and again, the entire document is posted at geoengineeringwatch.org. You can read all 750 pages of this congressional document that describes biological implications, social implications, legal implications. It's extremely extensive, and again, how big does the elephant in the room need to be, Greg, before people realize that although the media is trying to spin this and hide it for obvious reasons, there's no question about these programs being real and ongoing.
And this is about not only just about trying to cool the planet, but you're saying that yeah, sure, we have problems with some global warming caused by human activity, but you're saying that what their fix is making it exponentially worse. Talk about that.
Well, again, it's the same mentality that we see in the pharmaceutical industry to treat things in a manner that might hide a symptom but make the overall situation far worse in the human body. The same is true in this case with the planet as a whole. And as you so correctly said at the beginning of the show, I don't care how much money you print or what sort of numbers you manipulate, like the unemployment figures and so forth. When the environment doesn't produce anymore, it's game over. And historically, the environment has produced 75% of all global GDP for free. No longer. So in the 750-page document, again, the expressed goal is for those in power to decide who should get more rain, who should get less rain. And even within this document, they already cite, because it had been going on, as it is made clear in the document, for at least 30 years prior to 1978. We're back to the late 40s now. We have other documents to prove they had been at it on a big scale since the late 40s. So even though you have the citing of major damage being done by these programs, their desire to play God with the weather was not suppressed at all, and they were in the process of expanding, even in the 78 document, how they would further expand the programs to a wider scope and scale, and the ramifications are incredibly damning, that these people think they have a right to play God with the weather, no regard for the consequences whatsoever. And again, how can someone deny that this is going on when we have that kind of documentation, Greg?
So you were saying that in the pie chart, you say, listen, there's lots of reasons why we have global, climate problems, but if you put it in a pie chart, the biggest slice of the pie would be geoengineering or aerosol spraying or solar radiation management. That would be the biggest problem. And the reason why is because it doesn't allow the planet to react. Could you expound on that? Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, this is where, again, this is not in any way to downplay the damage that we've done to the planet from too many sources to count, and I am not downplaying that at all. We have a lot of problems that have been caused by human activity. There's no question about that. But as you correctly stated, when you inhibit the planet from being able to respond as the planet normally would, when CO2 goes up and the planet begins to warm, the hydrological cycle, the rain cycle, increases. This is the laws of physics. It can't not be that way unless you have a factor that's not being disclosed, like geoengineering. So they have basically completely straitjacketed the planet from being able to respond. And that's why we have, in spite of a warming planet, which geoengineering can deflect and cause large temporary areas of cooling with chemical ice nucleation and blocking the sun, it comes at the cost of a worsened overall warming because they shred the ozone layer, they disrupt the rain cycle horribly. We have drought expanding around the globe, Greg. Boreal forests are dying, so the forests can't absorb carbon as they otherwise would. And the UV is cooking the trees. We have toxic metals raining down on us that are what they're spraying in these programs, aluminum, barium, strontium, which is poisoning the root systems of the trees. And we believe they're using ocean fertilization as part of these programs as well to try to force the ocean to absorb more carbon, and that's killing the oceans. We have 400 dead zones around the planet. So this is the quote-unquote cure, Greg, that's worse than the disease, and that's saying a lot because we've done a lot of damage to the planet. But climate engineering is the epitome, the absolute epitome of human insanity in the quest for power and control. And ultimately, that's what these programs are about, Greg, power and control. If you look at this document we were speaking about, again, they're describing who they think should get more rain, who should get less rain, and who gives them the right to decide that.
And you were saying that you know for a fact, because you've talked to people high up in state government in California, and I bring up California because it has, what, a 1,000-year drought or 1,200-year drought going on. It's unbelievable. I'm worried about the people out there we've seen here on the rest of the country, the rest of the world. California's getting some rain. And I brought that up to you and said, we're not getting rain. I mean, none of the reservoirs are getting rain. And you're saying that the people like Governor Brown and his deputies know this is going on. You've talked to them, some of these people personally. Tell me about that.
Well, I had private meetings in the Capitol with Gavin Newsom, Lieutenant Governor Newsom, and his aides. I've been in Barbara Boxer's office. I've been in high-level EPA meetings. I've spoken in front of the California Energy Commission, California Air Resources Board, EPA. The whole system is rigged from bottom to top because the state's being kept afloat with printed, fed, fiat money, just like every other state and the stock market and everything else. So the system's bought, sold, and paid for. In regard to their attempt to make it appear
So wait. They know. Let me just get this on camera. They've told you, yeah, Dane, we know this is going on.
In a high-level EPA meeting with 5 top EPA reps arranged by a congressional representative, I was told to my face that they are told to test for combustion particulates only. The rest of their samples go out the window, and you can't find what you're told not to look for. I would call that a fixed system. When State of California Water Quality stopped testing for aluminum in 2002, I would call that a rigged system. Absolutely.
And what about Newsom, the deputy, the deputy up there in California, deputy governor? You've talked to him personally. He said, yeah, Dane, we know this is going on.
With Gavin Newsom, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, in his office with his aide, and the data I presented, satellite imagery and so forth, and Gavin took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair and said, I didn't need this, or we didn't need this. There's no question they know this is going on, but if we look at those who try to speak out, Greg, let's look at John Wheeler, a former Bush aide, in 2011 was seen outside the Pentagon reportedly stating he was going to blow the whistle on these programs. He was found in a landfill 2 days later. Those in any position of power or authority understand the consequences of speaking out in these programs.
Which is why I want to get to the next thing, the war on whistleblowers. And you've got some information on your site about that as well. Let's talk about that.
Well, if I could back up and finish that one question from before, you asked about did we get rain, is there drought relief?
Yes.
There's a very strong psychological aspect of what's going on to try to paint a picture to the public that's not accurate. Just like last year, what do we see on the news over and over and over? We saw Boston snow, Boston snow, Boston snow, and no coverage that the whole West was dry of snow, that we had the Canada and Alaska without snow, and they don't report on that. And like right now, when we see California got a few flash floods, that doesn't help the drought. A few isolated flash floods doesn't mean anything. And to give you an idea of how bad the drought is, again, it's at least a 1,200-year drought, and we haven't gotten any water in Northern California where the reservoirs are. And for the last 8 years, not 4, but 8 years, we're 250 inches of rain short where I live, 250. So bottom line is there's a lot of manipulation going on to try to pacify people so they don't understand how grave the situation is. In regard to the whistleblower,
wait, let me just. And you're saying that people, the people in California, from the governor, lieutenant governor, the senators, the higher ups, they know this is going on. That the geoengineering is causing this is amplifying this problem.
I was at the Capitol, one of many trips I've made to the Sacramento Capitol, the California State Capitol. The last time I was there was about 90 days ago, and told by Congressional aide, quote, off the record, we all know what's going on, we don't know what to do. This is the biggest elephant in the room. It's, everybody's afraid to step out of the shadows, but in the meantime, the ship is sinking, the entire ship, and we're all on it.
And then your war on whistleblowers, you have a CIA expert that has also some information on that on your site.
We do. Kevin Shipp, who salute his courage for speaking out, and we have just posted, and I encourage anybody to look at and read this under the recent column, a detailed outline of the procedure that's used to deal with anybody who dares to tell the truth. Multiple steps that if the person continues to try to tell the truth after disciplinary action and a lot of other steps that are taken, that the consequences just continue to ramp up until they become potentially the ultimate consequence, as John Wheeler I just mentioned at the Pentagon, if they go too far. Now, we have an example of this going on right now. With our team of attorneys that's preparing to file suit on this issue, we spoke to an EPA District 5 representative, 14-year veteran, environmental biologist, and he is in the process. He's trying to disclose that he's finding aluminum contamination that he connects to the climate engineering programs, exactly as all our lab tests from around the globe have conclusively proven. And he's being radically disciplined. His computer's already been taken away from him. He's being investigated. All the procedures that the CIA, former CIA officer describes are happening to this EPA person that we're communicating with right now.
And these are things they do to people in the government trying to blow the whistle.
Absolutely.
And then,
people ask why we don't hear from anybody in these programs. Well, why would we? How many people have tried to speak out, like this EPA person we're speaking to right now? How many people are trying to bring the truth to light, but are having the hammer literally lowered on them?
And then, what about the gag order with NOAA and those folks like that? Tell me about it's basically a confidentiality agreement. You're calling it a gag order. Tell me about what's going on with that. That's outside. That's still inside the government, but not exactly the CIA heavy hand that you were talking about.
Well, it's all connected. Again, when we have documents, as we described, we have a presidential document from '66, which is on our site. That's 80 pages long, describing these programs in great detail. We have this 750-page congressional document. We have film footage of these tankers spraying. We have lab tests from the ground. We have recent congressional governance documents, UN global governance documents. I mean, we have 150 patents. We have mountains and mountains and mountains of data. So the meteorological community, the government agencies like National Weather Service and NOAA, these people know these programs are going on. They're not stupid. They're simply afraid to speak out. And I've personally spoken with a NOAA scientist who told me the same thing the Congressional rep did, that we know about these programs, but and she said, I quote, we're alarmed as hell. We don't know what to do. We have no First Amendment protection. So these people know. So now what we have, as of a few weeks ago, actually, the way I caught wind of this, Greg, was I was mailed an envelope with a copy of the letter from PEER, the Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, from their attorneys, that was sent to me with no letter, no clue as to who sent it, no return address. Someone was trying to give me a heads up. Someone who was obviously afraid of having repercussions for giving me a heads up. That's what got me onto this particular gag order that's going on right now. And everybody who denies this issue would have to ask themselves, why in the world would the government meteorologists, the climate science personnel, have a gag order placed on them in every single employee in National Weather Service and NOAA if there wasn't something damn big to hide? It's an illegal gag order, and that's what it's being called by the attorneys for these employees.
They're telling them you can't talk about geoengineering or solar radiation management or this spraying. You can't talk about any of this weather modification we're doing. That doesn't exist.
Let me read a quote to you from Bill Hopkins. He's the executive president for the National Weather Service Employees Organization. He says, as a taxpayer, I find it highly disturbing that a government agency continues to push gag orders to hide how they operate. This is the work of the American government, owned by the American public, and should be open to the American public. Jeff Roosh, the executive director for PEER, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, said the National Weather Service is about the last place where national security-style secrecy rules need to be enforced. He continued with, everyone is free to talk about the weather except for people working inside the National Weather Service. Go figure. And that's his statement, go figure. I mean, so people need to absolutely see this for the red flag that it is. Gagging all the climate-related personnel in the U.S. government. Why? Because a lot of people are, I think, getting very uncomfortable about lying. They understand the magnitude of what's going on and the consequences for all of us if this continues.
So quite simply, we don't need a carbon tax. We need them to stop spraying.
It's more complicated. It's not that if we can stop climate engineering, we still have great challenges to face. There's no question about that. I mean, this is, if one stands back and looks at who would want the public to think everything's fine, business as usual is fine, I think we can see some obvious motivation there from the military-industrial complex, the fossil fuel industry, if you will. I mean, these are all problems. There's no question about that. But geoengineering is a bigger problem than all of those put together because the planet can't respond. We can't know where the climate's really at. And we have this massive elephant in the room, Greg, being excluded from all climate modeling because these people are gagged. So you have the IPCC, the largest scientific panel ever created in human history, 2,000 plus climatologists on any subject. It's the largest panel ever created. And they are not even accounting for the biggest single climate disrupting factor of all, climate engineering. So you have environmental groups who pretend to be fighting for the environment, that are also blatantly, hypocritically ignoring this issue. You have, unfortunately, a lot of institutions that seem more concerned about their 501c3 than they do about telling the truth. And the environmental groups, I'm sorry to say, are playing right into this because they are being as hypocritical as they could possibly be. And I deal with a lot of them, Sierra Club, Greenpeace, and they are simply protecting their nonprofit status, and they won't address this issue either.
And then your big problem isn't CO2, it's methane. And you were telling me in the pre-interview that, we could turn the planet into Venus. Tell me about that.
That's a mathematical fact. And again, for those who are looking at just the engineered cool down of the eastern U.S., which, by the way, has the whole meteorological community openly at least speaking about that, it's the most perplexing, unexplainable scenario on the planet Earth, that the eastern U.S. is the only below normal temperature zone for the last 2+ years. So carbon is a trigger to the methane release. It's a part of the equation. But geoengineering is perhaps a larger part of the equation because climate engineering has altered upper level wind currents, which has altered ocean currents. We now have warm water pumping into the Arctic and thawing formerly frozen methane deposits on the seafloor. So methane is the true linchpin in our collective coffins, and if it continues to release, there's enough methane, Greg, mathematically, in the Arctic alone to cause a Permian-style mass extinction 100 times over, and it's releasing now. We have the atmospheres filling with methane. We're seeing the average nighttime low temperatures rising twice as fast as daytime highs, and that's what we would expect to see with methane flooding the atmosphere, because methane, and this is important for people to understand, methane over a 10-year time horizon is 100 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2. 100 times.
And so the methane release is exponential. I mean, how bad could this get? How soon?
It's getting bad already. We're seeing methane counts. Over the last million years, methane atmospherically has not been over 700 parts per billion. CO2 is measured in parts per million. Methane's in parts per billion. We're up to 3,000 ppb, parts per billion now, from 700. That's a massive increase, and it's escalating exponentially. So the bottom line is the gravity of what's unfolding now cannot be overstated. And for those who think that this is some sort of natural cyclical pattern, we have the damage done from a lot of activities, the cutting down of forests, the paving of the planet, and so forth, and specifically in climate engineering, the intentional effort to disrupt the climate system. How can anyone on any side of the fence environmentally think that anything is natural at this point, when you have this giant geoengineering elephant in the room wreaking havoc with Earth's climate system by people who are all trying to play weather whack-a-mole, which amounts to weather warfare, which amounts to biological warfare, because we have to breathe what they're spraying.
Well, one last thing, Dane, I want to get in here. I really appreciate you coming on. You spent, I've said this before, but I want people to understand that you have been dedicated to this. You spent a lot, almost, I don't know how much of your retirement on this. You do not sell anything. You do not make endorsements for anything. You don't even have Google ads. I've been all over your site. So you live and die on people giving you stuff. I know you're not a 501c3, but is there a place that people can donate on your site? Do you have a donate button?
We do, and again, what donations we do get goes toward materials. The big event we had in Reading, 1,000 commercial DVDs were given away. The whole event was free for everybody. We don't charge admission. We paid for the guests that came, and we simply, the only goal for us, for myself, is to get the word out. So any help we get goes toward getting materials back out to those in the field who need them, color glossy flyers, commercial DVDs, and so forth, and that's what the revenue goes for with whatever we get.
Okay, geoengineeringwatch.org, that's the site. There's a donate button for you guys watching on YouTube. I'll put the link to actually the donations page in the after the interview section. Go into the right through on YouTube and into USA Watchdog, scroll down. I'll put that in there. Dane Wigington, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us an update on all points on the geoengineering solar radiation management story that many people consider to be chemtrails. Geoengineeringwatch.org is the website. I'll have links to that as well. Dane Wigington, thank you so much for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg. And if I could say one last thing, people from their own home computer can do a tremendous amount of good by simply sending out data to those who don't know. And we have links at the top of the left side of the page in Geoengineering Watch that are designed for that. They're all put together already, so you can help us to spread the word. You tell two, they tell two each, the second day of a 30-day month, and so on for a month. That's 5.5 million. If we have everybody working together to raise awareness, we'll reach critical mass much faster. Thank you, Greg.
Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org. Thank you for joining us today on usawatchdog.com.